Car Guy Radio Show.
I say this calls for action, and now.
Walk me up to love and start forever now. Forever now. Take my heart forever now. Forever now. Just say yes forever now.
Just say yes forever now. Say yes to the dress. Yes, that's the theme song to Yes for the Dress. Yes to the Dress, that show. Now, I know some of the guys from the Masculine Journey may think they want to pull my man card. And some of the car guys are out there asking, Robbie, really say yes to the dress? Well, that's the title of today's show. And hang on, because if you give me a couple of minutes, God really has blessed me on this whole subject. He's given me this lesson plan all week long, and I think you'll see how this relates to the Christian Car Guy show, really in every way. You know, a Christian's hope is that day, right? That day, dressed in white, forever now. Just think about that, how powerful that word is, forever now. You know, and it's just wonderfully portrayed in that song. So as I was reading William Gurnall's book, The Christian in Full Armor, and he made mention of the 45th song, which we're going to talk about in a while, about how each Christian has those wedding clothes. They're coming, and you're crocheting them kind of every single day of your life. You're saying yes to the dress. And so as I was thinking about all that, and I was reading the 45th Psalm, and I thought, you know, this is really exactly what my wife and daughters love that show. I just watch it. So I said, you know, I really like to incorporate music in the Christian Car Guy show. Music just kind of brings Jesus to life for me in a lot of ways. So I said, I wonder what the theme song is to say yes to the dress. Well, it's written by Christian Bush, and I can't help but wonder if you watch him sing it, if he just isn't absolutely a Christian, and it was really written more about saying yes to the wedding clothes that we're going to have as we marry Jesus, our hope. But I want you to listen real quickly again, just a little short clip of that song, and tell me if you don't hear a little of what your hope is all about.
Take me down in white and marry me. Walk me up to love and start forever now. Forever now. Take my heart forever now.
And a little bit longer, a little short, and a little ways further into the song, you'll hear this verse where he says, today's the day you've been waiting for. Like a dream, turn the key, feel the lock, open the door. Forever now. I mean, just grasp hold of that. Forever now. You see, in everyone's heart, if we accept it, right, we get to enjoy forever now. What an invitation. But as Jesus explained in his parable of the wedding feast in Matthew 22, he said, you know, you don't want to get caught dead without your wedding clothes. In fact, he says at the end of it, many are called, but few are chosen. You know, what bride would ever show up to her wedding without her dress? And so how do we, think about it, how do we say yes to the dress? You know, the Bible has all kinds of verses. I've been studying all week long, and I'm just excited to share these with you. Now, this is a live show, and I would love to hear your story of when you walked up to love and said yes to the dress. Forever now, right? He touched your heart, and you sensed that. And I would love to hear that story. 866-348-7884. And I guarantee you, I'm not the only person that would love to hear that story. Christians out there love to hear the story of when you said yes to the dress. Now, I've told this story a number of times, but I've thought about it all week, that God really, really touched my heart with this particular story in my own life. About 4 months before I was called to do the Christian Car Guy show, which was probably 11, 12 years ago now, I was the dealer principal of Westside Chrysler Dodge Jeep in Moxville, and I had more than I could say grace over, really. And I was praying about a lot of things. The dealership was really a struggle for me in a lot of ways. And I was deep in prayer one night about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, just praying. And Jesus showed up for me. It scared me to death. It was like he showed up, and of course we've all talked to Jesus, and hopefully we've all talked to Jesus in a lot of wonderful ways where he touched us, and we were in no way afraid. But this particular night when he showed up, it terrified me, and it was him. But he just said, "Robbie, what do you want?" And I almost hit the floor with the sense of his presence that night. And I was so overcome by his presence that I just kind of glibly said, "Well, I want to serve you." And he said, "Oh." And as he said, "Oh," my mind immediately started all these things that he'd asked me to do that I really had never done yet. But the beautiful thing about every single one of them, and they were flashing in my mind as fast as you could possibly, you've heard where your life flashes before your eyes. Well, here I saw all these things that he'd asked me to do, and they were going boom, 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 boom. And the beautiful thing is every single one of them was something that I could easily do. It was like you were supposed to have lunch with Jerry. You were supposed to call your friend so-and-so. You were supposed to, meet up with such and such. All these things were just really simple, easy ways for me to connect to somebody else in the body of Christ somehow, or even people that God was wanting me to connect with. And I was so excited about the fact that I was like, I can do this stuff. It wasn't like I have to change the world. I could just connect with these people that I already know and I already love. And so I got up and I started writing these things down. I was writing them down. Boom, boom, boom. And remember, what did he ask me? "Robbie, what do you want?" And so I started writing these things down as I was just overcome with it. Wow, I can do this. It was real repentance. Like, man, I get to serve Jesus because he showed me this stuff right here. And so after I wrote it all down, it took a little while. I went back to bed, and I was just laying there actually in tears thinking about how wonderful it was that now I could actually do what it was that I felt like Jesus had put on my heart, and I was repenting to him. And all of a sudden, I started to see what I would call his glory. He was showing up like he's going to show up for all of us the day that we get to actually have that dress on, that moment in heaven. He was showing up, and I could see this phenomenal glow, and it was just unbelievably beautiful, and I got so excited that I woke my wife up. I was like, "Tammy, it's Jesus. He's here. I'm going to see his face. I am going to see his face." And something welled up deep inside of me like I'll never, ever, ever forget as long as I live, and it was that hope. I am going to see Jesus' face right now. And of course, with the commotion after my wife woke up, and "What in the world are you doing, Robbie? And have you lost your mind?" I was telling her, I really did. Well, she went back to sleep, and I laid there with that moment kind of over, and then all of a sudden, the Holy Spirit just grasped my mind and said, "Robbie, do you know what you want now?" You see, the question was, "Robbie, what do you want?" Well, the truth is you want to see his face. I mean, you want that moment. You want that moment where heaven touches earth, where you have forever now. And so I would love to hear your story. I know you got one, and it would encourage so many others of your forever now. 866-348-7884. All the verses we're going to go through, all the stuff that we're talking about today on Say Yes to the Dress. It's all there at ChristianCarGuy.com. At ChristianCarGuy.com, of course, we got our car show calendar up for July, all kinds of sharp car shows going on, podcasts, all the Christian Car Guy Theater episodes are up there at the podcast page, but also the Jesus Labor Love. And the Jesus Labor Love is car repair labor for single moms, widows, and families in crisis. And actually, this morning when I woke up, here's another email from another poor single mom who just is in the middle of this struggle of not knowing how she's going to get, her timing belt fixed in her car. And last week, I hope you listen to the show, we had a lady, it was really unusual, that had texted me that she needed help with her rent. And I really felt God put it on my heart because the way she texted me was, she said that God had ordered her steps, and we needed $475 in order to meet that, and you would not believe how God met that need through you guys. Actually, through the show last week, and actually during the show last week. I want to share that when we come back, as well as some more of Say Yes to the Dress when we come back. Your story, 866-348-7884.
Ever plan to go to west? Walk me up to love and start forever now. Forever now. Take my heart forever now. Forever now. Just say yes forever now.
Take my heart forever now. Say yes to the dress. Kind of an interesting thing to say, but there's also this other part to it that we're going to get to a little bit later through the show. It's say yes to the dress, but no to stains. And those stains are kind of a scary thing, but we can talk about those, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But I would love to hear your story of when you touched forever now, however that looked, when you said yes to the dress. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. And we were talking about our Jesus Labor of Love at the website, which, by the way, at the website, ChristianCarGuy.com, I have all these scriptures and stuff we're going to go through today. But there's also Christian Bush's Say Yes to the Dress song. If you've fallen in love with that song like I have this week, I've just listened to it over and over and over again. It should be a worship song because it is so clearly a picture of that moment that we all Christians are hoping for, where the wedding supper of the Lamb, where we get to actually take part in that ceremony, is going to be more than amazing. So that's there at ChristianCarGuy.com, as well as the Jesus Labor Love, car repair for single moms, widows, and families in crisis. And I wanted to update you last week. We had this case where this girl had texted me late at night that she had prayed that God would order her steps, and she felt led to text me if I knew of any other nonprofit organizations that could help her. She'd been homeless in the past, and she was facing eviction. It was an interesting situation. Like, all of a sudden, I was like, God, why am I getting this? Because I fix cars. I don't know anything about somebody being evicted, but it was clear to me that God had put it right there. And the more I prayed about it, the more I felt I was, even though I didn't have the money to help her with her rent, I was like, well, what do I do? And so as I prayed, I went out on Facebook and I put it on our Jesus Labor Love Christian Car Guy Facebook page that we were looking for this help. And we actually raised like $275 of what we needed right then. And I thought that, you know, she could raise some of the rest. She got $300. She, through talking to her landlord who'd started the eviction process, they dropped it down to where she didn't need $900 and some odd. She only needed $775, and she had $300. So we were with the $475, and we'd raised $275. So we were just to the point where we were trying to raise $200 or $300 more, as I recall last week. And I shared that story on the air. And oh my word, I mean, while we were on the air, I'm seeing all this stuff coming across the website from PayPal saying, you have this, you have that, 10, 20, somebody, $200. I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, we completely met this girl's need. And then obviously some other needs that came on earlier this week from other moms and widows and families in crisis. But the cool thing, I mean, well, it was all cool. It was certainly neat for me, very encouraging for me to see how God had met this need for this girl who had just simply, just been praying. But Monday morning, I called the landlord at 8 o'clock, and she had told me on Friday, look, you can't send me the $275 because you have to send the whole amount. We can't accept a partial payment. We've already started the eviction process, and this has to come in one check of the whole amount. And of course, we didn't have the whole amount on Friday. And I said, well, I'm going to try to raise it on Saturday. And I could tell that she was like, this ain't happening. But she was so, when I called her at 8 o'clock Monday, she was like, oh man, how wonderful. I mean, you could tell that she had been touched by what you guys did. And she said, you called me at 8 o'clock. I've just said, how nice to call me at 8 o'clock so that we could not have to follow through on what had happened. And so, I just have to pass on how blessed I was by that happening last week. And I felt like, we got to touch eternity a little bit. But last week, we had shared this story, and I think it's so relevant to saying yes to the dress. You might remember it was about a little boy who had fallen in the water, and it was a missionary father that was trying to find this little boy, but he had grasped onto the pier that was holding up the dock, so to speak, and his father couldn't find him, looked everywhere for him, and several minutes, a very trying situation of this father desperately in the water trying to find his son who'd fallen in, and of course the whole story's there last week's show. But the point that happened was that the little boy just put this death grip on the pylon, the pillar that was holding the boat. And that scene has just stuck with me for a couple weeks now of that is such a picture. And later on, the father asked him after they were resuscitated and all this, and he said, why were you holding on to that pillar? And he said, Dad, I was waiting on you to rescue me. I knew you would come. Well, isn't that a picture of the Christian life? Isn't that a picture of what Jacob did when, he wrestled with God all night, right? He grabbed on and he would not let go until God blessed him. Well, it's an interesting thing as I was studying this Say Yes to the Dress and thinking about the different weddings that go on in the Bible that we see in Psalm 45, but we also see it in Song of Solomon. And in the Song of Solomon, if you look in chapter 3, you'll see the Shulamite woman says the same thing. I found the one my heart loved. I clung on to him, and I would not let him go. Well, that is a picture so much of what saying yes to the dress really looks like. So when you go through some of these verses that are in the Bible about this, you look interestingly in the book of Job. He says in Job 29:14, I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My justice was like a robe and a turban. So it was interesting that he put on righteousness, and we put on Christ, right? He's our righteousness, our breastplate of righteousness. And so many places you'll find it says other places in the scripture, like in Isaiah 61, where it says you put on his salvation. Well, if you're putting on salvation in the Hebrew, you are putting on Yeshua. So you get that picture. So Job is saying, I put that on, and then it says, it clothed me, the righteousness clothed me with justice, like a robe, like a turban. And see, justice has to do, interestingly, with judgment. Now, we're told, judge not, right? But in so many different ways, there are things that we're looking at every single day that we know are injustices. And some of those injustices are in the car business, and we're going to talk about those when we come back. We have an update from Andy Bowersox coming from Chicago. When we come back, we're going to hear about what's going on with him and the prayer bus. So much more. Christian Car Guy Show coming up. Say yes to the dress.
Take me down in white and marry me. Walk me up to love and start forever now. Forever now. Take my heart forever now. Forever now.
Forever now, say yes to the dress. It's amazing to me that Christian Bush, that's masculinity, in my opinion, for him to say, walk me down in white and marry me. I mean, that is what we're about in creating our wedding clothes, actually, through what God does in our life. As we grab onto him, he puts justices in our life. He puts opportunities for us to start that needlework that's talked about in Psalm 45. That is our wedding clothes, which are absolutely phenomenal. You're listening to the Christian Car Guy Show, and this show titled Say Yes to the Dress. But right now, we got an update from our good friend Andy Bowersox, who's out there crocheting his stuff right now. Andy, welcome from Chicago, or welcome.
Well, yeah, good morning, Robbie. How you doing this morning?
I am excited.
I was just thinking, I haven't had the benefit of hearing it in the earlier part of your show, but I was just thinking, This is, I believe, year 5 that we have called from the road to check in with you from our annual Pray for Your Pastor bus tour. And you just called it. We're just pulling into Chicago, actually, to be part of what's being called the Jesus Summer, and it's about 40 days of prayer, serving and loving the residents of Chicago, particularly in some of the more dangerous and impoverished neighborhoods. So not exactly sure what we're getting ready to get into, but I'm excited about it too, and I'm excited that people have particularly Pastor Demas from New York City, has had this vision and burden to pour the church into the urban and the difficult areas of Chicago. So that's where we're at right now, and looking forward to see what the Lord has in store today.
Yeah, and that praying for the pastors, across the country is kind of what leads to these things, right? As God gets in there through your cover, then He gives these guys these visions for these amazing things that He wants to do through our prayers.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We're actually here to help take part of a special pastor prayer service. That'll happen later today. I mentioned to you this is 40 days, the beginning of the first day of 40 days of serving the city and loving and praying through there. But I agree with you, Robbie. Our pastors and the ministry, the kingdom leaders in our area that are out seeking, asking, praying, and serving and saying, God, what do you want us to do? Show us where to go. I heard this guy say, the church, this particular project is called Hands Across Chicago. And I heard this guy say, the church often runs from the urban neighborhoods, the challenges, the drug activity, gang activity, and this guy, this pastor, his vision is to run to it, and to show this is where Jesus would be. And so I'm maybe a little bit nervous about it, but I'm also excited about to see what God's going to do through this, because it's been a long time building up to it, and today's the beginning of this service day. So we're here to serve, here to help, and here to pray. That's part of it. And then we're off to other parts of the country after that too.
Yeah, that's what, to me, that's why road trips are what the Christian Car Guy show's about.
That's why we're calling in right here, isn't it?
Because you're going to make this stop in Chicago, but you're going. Actually, I was so excited because you told me over the phone this week. He said, Robbie, I'm stopping at these places I never heard of, like Pocatello. He goes, I think that's in Washington. I said, no, Pocatello's in Idaho. I know, I was born there.
Well, you would know better than me, but, as part of our tour, I know you have some listeners out in the Washington area, maybe other parts of the Northwest. But by all means, if anybody is listening out there now and you'd like us to make a stop at your church and drop off some of our love gifts and just stop by and encourage your church, call in, write in. You can send an email to info@Energize Ministries, info@EnergizeMinistries.com, and tell us where your church is. And if we're even remotely close, we have got a whole bus full of goodies and gifts to give out. Happy to do it on behalf of any of your listeners. And we'll see where it goes. I may even call back next week and let you know when we're in either Idaho or Washington area, wherever that Pocatello place is. But we'd love to check in and see maybe we can serve some of your listeners serve their pastors on behalf of your listeners too. That'd be great.
And you may be driving along and you see this giant, huge motorhome. It says "Pray for your pastor," but is it still tell us to text?
Yeah. We have a daily text service we send out. That's the way that you can be praying, and all you do is text the word pastor to 74574. You type in 74574 and just text the word pastor, and you can find all that stuff on our website too. It's Energize Ministries, but yeah, keep your eyes open. We actually had a couple people spotted us last night driving from from Ohio up through Indiana. That responded in and want us to send some gifts out to their pastors too. So I think it's I always get a little nervous when we start out on this thing. It's a lot of work getting ready for these big tours and trips, but people love seeing the bus out on the road, and we like to see the thumbs up and the honks and the waves. But we really like when people respond and say, "Hey, this is where I'm from. This is my church. We'd love for you to go by and visit with your pastor." and it's always a good time of encouragement and surprising encouragement too, which is sometimes the best kind.
Yeah, and what a message, for the church is to pray for our pastors and pray for the leaders across the country, because God's doing great, great, great things. Every single day he's touching people for eternity, and he's doing it through his church. I mean, that's obviously how it works. Thank you, Andy. We will look forward to the updates.
Listen, thanks for having me. Maybe I can call on next week and give you a report when we're all the way out on the West Coast there, too.
Yeah, we will look forward to that. Thank you, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Robbie. You bet.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I always love to hear, what Andy's up to out there. And it's a big part of what we were just talking about is the question kind of in today's show, besides the question I have for you, is why haven't you called yet at 866-348-7884 and told me your story of when you said yes to the dress, 866-348-7884. But the other question is kind of how do we say yes for the dress and yes to the dress? And as I mentioned, I was reading William Gurnall's book, The Christian in Full Armor, and he was talking about the helmet of salvation, and he goes to the First Thessalonians part of it where it says it's the helmet of the hope of salvation. And there he was talking about what greater hope could you have than the needlework that's described in Psalm 45 of putting together your wedding clothes. And who would want to stain their wedding clothes, and he used the word slutteries, or vomit? And what he means is, by getting drunk or by, whatever living, you're going to mess up your wedding clothes. And obviously Jesus had a lot to say about that, about many are called and few are chosen. So, we have sort of this interesting opportunity to live holy lives and to be looking forward to that hope. And that hope is like a helmet, that with that hope, it helps us focus on Christ, but it also helps us grab hold of him, like we were talking about, the boy in the dock, right? And I for some reason, I can't get rid of that as I think about what Jacob did, what the Shulamite woman did. But I want to read Psalm 45 a little bit, since we got a minute here, since you haven't called in at 866-348-7884, and listen to the hope that he's talking about. And I didn't realize before I read this in that book that this was clearly a picture of what's going to happen to us on that day. It says Psalm 45. It's a royal wedding song for the director, according to Lilies of the Sons of Korah, a contemplative song, a love song. And check this out. It says, my heart is stirred with a good word. I speak my verses to the king. My tongue is the pen of a skillful writer. You are the most handsome of the sons of men. Now, if you're familiar with the Song of Solomon, the Shulamite goes into the same kind of a statement. And it's like, the fairest of 10,000. That's the picture. And when you hear that, you're the most handsome of men. We're talking about Jesus. And look at the next line, makes it even clearer, right? It says, grace pours from your lips. Favor. When you're in Jesus' presence, you're his favorite. So it says, you're the most handsome of the sons of men. Grace pours from your lips. Therefore, God has blessed you forever. Right? Forever now. God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword on your thigh, O mighty one. In your splendor and your majesty, ride victoriously. On behalf of truth, meekness, and justice, let your right hand display awesome things. Your arrows are sharp. Peoples fall beneath you. This is the guy. Forever now. Call us with your story. 866-348-7884. 866-34-TRUTH. We're saying yes to the dress today on the Christian Car Guy Show, saying no to injustice and stains. So much more coming up.
Today's the day you've been waiting for. Like a dream, turn the key, feel the lock, open up the door. Won't you walk me down? We'll start forever now.
Saying yes to the dress and no to stains today on the Christian Car Guy Show. Thank you for hanging with us today. I think you're going to see in a minute here how this all comes together in our lives in so many different ways. I mean, the hope is unbelievable of what it is when we say yes to the dress, and what that raises in our hearts we have no understanding of, because it's beyond the alpha, it's before the beginning, it's beyond the end. It's way too deep for words. But if you cling on to Jesus, you can get there. And so as we were listening to as I was reading the 45th Psalm, I'm at verse 6. It says, your arrows are sharp. People fall beneath you into the heart of the king's enemies. Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. And a scepter of justice is the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, anointed you. Isn't that interesting? Therefore, God, your God anointed you. It speaks of the Trinity. You can't help but miss that. That's Jesus. With the oil of gladness above your companions. All your robes have myrrh, aloes, cassia. From ivory places, stringed instruments make you glad. King's daughters are among your honored women, and at your right hand stands the queen in gold of Ophir. This is really cool. Listen, O daughter, consider. Listen, O daughter, consider and incline your ear. Forget your people in your father's house, right? You will leave your father and mother. There it is. Then the king will desire your beauty. Honor him, for he is your Lord. A daughter of Tyre comes with a gift. The richest people will court your favor, your grace, right? All glorious is the king's daughter within the palace. And here comes the part that William Colonel wanted to highlight. Your gown is interwoven with gold, right? Your life, you're weaving that, the warp and woof of your life is putting together that wedding clothes that you've got, but you get it by, just grabbing hold of Jesus, and he's weaving it. She will be led to the king in embroidered garments. Her virgins, her companions following her are coming in to you. This is the 45th Psalm. They are led in with joy and gladness. They enter in the palace of the king. Your sons will take your father's place. You will make them princes throughout the land. I will cause your name to be remembered in all generations. Therefore, the nations will praise you forever and ever. Forever now. That's what we're talking about today, saying yes to the dress. Well, see, if you look in Revelations 19, we get back to that. It says, let us rejoice and exalt, give him glory. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure. Interestingly, it says, it was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure. For the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints. It's kind of cool that we grasp onto Jesus, and then he helps us clothe ourselves with the righteous deeds of the saints. See, I get so much hope from Isaiah 61:10 going, but take a look at that. And we all know, well, I love Isaiah 61, period, because, that's where we set the captives free, and it's declaring the year of the Lord's favor, the year that you're his favorite. But you just go a couple verses down from that is Isaiah 61, where it says, he hath clothed me with garments of salvation. In other words, he has clothed me with garments of Yeshua, right? Because that's Hebrew for Jesus. He has clothed me with garments of Yeshua. So, right? Cling on to Jesus. Hold him tight like the Shulamite. Here's Song of Songs 3:4. When I found him, whom my soul loves, I held him, and I would not let him go until I brought him into my mother's house, into the chamber of she who conceived me. And two verses down from that, Solomon, if you read on in the Song of Solomon, he starts in his coach to marry her. I mean, this is the deal. And the challenge of Revelation 3:4, if you go a little early into Revelations, it says, you still have a few named in Sardis, people who have not soiled their garments, stains, right? We don't want to stain our dresses. So as we talked about when we looked at Job, how is it that we can put on Jesus and then use that judgment, right? Because he says we're going to judge the nations and all that. So there is a point where you see injustice. I think Jesus brings this out in you, and you see it. For me, being a car guy, right? And I've written article after article about buy here, pay here, and the evil of what some of these people do with this so-called easy financing. Like, we'll finance anybody, and they take your whole down payment, and it actually pays for the value of the car, whether you know that or not. And then they take and make payments weekly on top of that. And they have it all set up to repo that car so they can go do it again and again when they've set people into payments that they know they can't afford. That's an injustice. And I get the opportunity with this radio show to speak out against it. I get to speak out against false labor, right? Car people who oversell things that your car doesn't need. We talked about it a few weeks ago. Selling you a tune-up on a car that doesn't need a tune-up anymore. But there's also ways that they inflate the labor through these car guides. And again, that's all written up at Christian Car Guy under false labor. But those things are easy for us to see injustice and to go in to speak into that and to stand up for Christ. And again, realizing that our battle isn't against flesh and blood. It's against those spiritual forces. It's those prayers that Andy was talking about where we engage God to help us. But then, it can come a little easier and a little closer to your home because how many times is the injustice just maybe your children disrespecting their mother, or a dear friend that is not treating his wife right, or even doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing. And so how do you come up against the enemy who's clearly the one who's deceiving your friend or deceiving your children? And a lot of our time actually in weaving our garments, I believe, is on our knees. Right? Is really taking on the actual enemy, asking God to come and take on the one who really does kill and destroy, because God makes us warriors to fight for truth and justice, just like Superman. And as we grab onto Jesus like that little boy in the dock, knowing he's going to come save us, he's going to come save our kids, he's going to come save that guy right there. But see, the interesting thing is I think that we not only grab hold of Jesus, but our faith, if we believe in our friends, if we believe in those who we want to come to Christ, we grab onto them too. And we hold on with everything we got, and we don't let go. Because when you let go, right, what you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. What you lose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And so here's our opportunity, right, to put on salvation, put on Jesus, put on Yeshua. And then as we grab hold of that, we grab hold of others, and we do not let them go. We realize that they're just being deceived. Yeah, they're taking advantage of other people, or I'm being deceived. How can I reach out as a warrior for Christ? And therein lies the picture of weaving that garment, saying yes to the dress. It's wedding clothes. Jesus is clear on this. He says, many are called, few are chosen. There's something inherently really sad right in there that everybody doesn't get the dress, but everybody has an opportunity to say yes to the dress. And so I would encourage, I really would, to, I'm hoping you like that song. If you go to ChristianCarGuy.com, you will see there is Christian Bush's rendition of that song, which is from the TV show Say Yes to the Dress, which I got to believe, he's a Christian, and he's really speaking about something. Of course, I love marriage, and it's such a picture of our marriage to Christ. But here, this is a little deeper than, well, it's probably both. And so, go to ChristianCarGuy.com, find out more about the Jesus Labor Love car repair labor for single moms and widows. We could be praying for them. We can look at past episodes, but most of all, this week, say yes to think about in your own life, how can you be doing your own needlepoint as you just clasp onto Jesus for all you got? I'm so grateful that you listened to the Christian Car Guy Show today. Remember, slow down. Jesus walked everywhere he went and got it all done in 33 years. And we just going to be praying this week that you're going to enjoy saying yes to the dress.